And now to protests continuing in the country of Georgia. These protests come as the government of the former Soviet country has decided to delay a bid to join the European Union. Protesters and police clashed throughout the country's capital city. Now, polls show that a majority of citizens actually support joining the EU. CNN's Linda Kincaid has this report on the ongoing unrest.
Facing down a row of riot police, a protester in Georgia defiantly waves a European Union flag, a powerful symbol of what's galvanized thousands of protesters in Tbilisi to rally nightly since Thursday, when the government said it was suspending talks to join the EU for 4 years. Night after night, demonstrators have set off fireworks near Parliament, clashing with police who've responded with tear gas and water cannons. Protesters say the future of the country is at stake. Polls show more than 80% of Georgians support joining the EU, a long-time goal of the country that's enshrined in its constitution.
It's just the fact that my country deserves to be free from the Russian regime that has haunted us for many centuries. And I believe that we need to get into Europe. It's truly what we've wanted for many, many centuries.
But that path has become less clear lately. Critics say the country's ruling Georgian Dream Party has become increasingly authoritarian and in recent years has moved away from the West, deepening ties with Russia, which the party denies. In parliamentary elections in October, which were widely seen as a referendum on whether to align with Russia or the West, the Georgian Dream Party claimed victory in a vote the opposition says was rigged. The European Parliament called it neither free nor fair. Opposition MPs are boycotting the new parliament. The country's outgoing president, who supports joining the EU, says she won't step down until new elections are held.
There
is no legitimate parliament, and therefore an illegitimate parliament cannot elect a new president. Thus, no inauguration can take place, and my mandate continues until a legitimately elected parliament is formed.
Georgia's Prime Minister says there will be no new elections. He accuses the opposition of plotting a revolution and says Georgia is committed to EU membership despite the delay.
The response is very clear. So we have not suspended anything related to the European integration. It's just a lie.
But the protests are not only continuing, but spreading to more cities. So too, concerns over the treatment of the protesters. The US and EU have condemned the use of excessive force against them. On Saturday, the US suspended its strategic partnership with Georgia, something the Georgian Prime Minister says he will revisit with the new administration in January. Linda Kincaid, CNN.
Protesters and police clashed in Georgia's capital, Tbilisi, in the early hours of Monday morning. A sign that opposition is spreading to the government's decision to suspend talks on joining the European Union.
Well, tensions remain high between the ruling Georgia Dream Party and its opponents, who accuse it of pursuing authoritarian, anti-Western and pro-Russian policies. CNN's Sebastian Shukla is in Berlin following developments. Seb, talk to us about the latest on these clashes between the police and the protesters and the reasons behind what's fueling them.
Well, guys, the protests that we've just been showing pictures of have been going on now for the fourth night in a row, and they show no signs of calming down at the moment. Those pictures are quite dramatic when we've seen protesters firing fireworks at the police, but equally we've also seen the police acting in a very heavy-handed measure to try and quell any forms of dissent. There are videos circulating on social media of the police beating protesters. There are reports of opposition politicians are being arrested as well. Now, I've seen one video of a police officer kicking a protester in the head. So the protests themselves and the standoff between the protesters and the police look set to continue. But as you were saying, Christina, the issue that kicked off these protests is the decision by the Georgian Dream, the government of Georgia, to suspend talks with the EU on Georgia's ascension to becoming a member of the bloc. Now, that is a very, very controversial decision for Georgians, because for a long time, Georgia and its Georgian people have maintained that they want to become a member, a fully integrated member of those Western institutions, including the EU, but also NATO as well. This will mark a major departure in that policy for Georgia. And what many people are saying in the US and the EU is that this will take Georgia down into a path more akin to its northern neighbour of Russia. So we've seen the protests continue out onto the streets and clashes with the police, but there is also now discussions and heated debate ongoing within the political realm as well. The president of Georgia is due to step down from her position, a ceremonial one, at the end of the year, but she has said she's not going anywhere. Now, she views these elections which took place in October as illegitimate. And the EU has called for fresh elections to be held within a year because they also saw them as being unfair. But the Prime Minister of Georgia, who does hold the power of the governing party together, has said she's got to go. There is no democratic way in which she is able to stay. So we will see how these protests unfold. But it's not something that is new to Georgia. Over the last few months, we've seen protests like this and clashes on the streets outside Parliament over a variety of different laws that the Georgian Dream party has tried to pass in Georgia, which included a foreign agents bill and a more restrictive bill on LGBTQ+ rights as well. Both of those, Georgians say, look like they're coming less in line with the EU and more in line with a Kremlin-style authoritarian regime. Guys.
Yeah, as you say, Seb, there have been protests before. There's a theme here. I'm just wondering if you feel it's growing, the momentum against the government, moving outside Tbilisi, and there's more of a groundswell against the current leadership.
Yeah, I think that there are protests that have been taking place in the other Georgian cities. What is difficult to get a sense of is just how big those protests are. But when you go and speak to people, and we've seen people speaking on the streets of Georgia, that this really isn't the path that they want to go down. There was a poll done earlier this year which put 80% of Georgians saying that they want to become members of the EU. The fact that the government has said openly now that they don't want to pursue that, or at least they want to pause it, is a big deal for Georgians, and they are manifesting their hate on the streets. I mean, it's somewhat symbolic, isn't it, Max, that these protests are taking place largely outside the seat of government, as it's really becoming a clash now of a authoritarian regime against the democratic will of its people, Max.
OK, Seb in Berlin, thank you so much.